let's talk about it.
Hello and welcome back to Thicc Radio, the award-winning podcast where we talk about gaining, fetishism, and everything in their orbit. I'm James.
And I'm Tim, so let's get into it.
How you doing, hon?
I'm doing good, you?
Yeah, doing fine. We're back for another review. You know, dear listeners, I know we say this because in fairness we don't get so much proactive feedback on like what people think about certain styles of episodes. But at some point, you're going to tell us, like, how do you feel about us punishing ourselves like this?
Just remember, we're doing you a favor.
Yeah.
It's so you don't have to watch this crap.
Yeah, if you'd like to make it up to us, we do have a donate thing. So, you know, send me enough money to buy a coffee to wake myself back up after having seen this shit. Duly requested. Thank you. Thank you very much. But today, we're doing a bit of a docu-dump, and this is probably not the only one we're going to do. I just feel like there are... Do you find that, like, okay, we do the research, we find that there's, like, a list that we need to watch, and then we watch them, and then people are like, oh, but what about these ones? And then we're like, oh my god, there's more documentaries, Jesus.
There always are.
So, you know, this is not the first docu-dump. We've done other documentary things before, but I feel like we'll do this, and then if there's more, we'll do, like, a part 2. So,
and 3 and 4 and 5, most likely.
17 Electric Boogaloo, you know.
There'll be more of our reviews than there are Land Before Time movies.
I was just about to say, like the Land Before Time, the Great Migration.
Like when are you gonna tell the kids the truth? They're all dead.
She's dead. Oh god.
That's why I appreciate those really screwed up kids books like Go the Fuck to Sleep and All My Friends Are Dead and You Can't Be an Astronaut, It's Just Not Practical. Cut them when they're young, you know, just get that cynicism in as fast as possible.
Oh, dear God. Right, so today we're reviewing My Big Fat Fetish, directed by Nick Betts, and Fat Front, directed by Louise Detlefsen and Louise Kjeldsen.
Good for you for being able to pronounce those names.
You what?
Good for you for being able to pronounce those names. I looked at them and I was like, how do you pronounce that?
Johnson.
Smith.
Brown. Okay. So, My Big Fat Fetish. This one was an exploration of female feties. It's not the first time we've come across this subject, and it won't be.
Really? Is this the first time we're talking about female feties?
No, I think it is. It's a very under-researched topic, and I think that
clearly
that we've never come across this before. But female feties. One of the most immediate points I found is actually how really nicely they're presented. Like the different women, right? They wear stylish clothing. They're well manicured during interviews. Do you feel like this is different to how we see feties in most shit we watch?
Yes, absolutely. They actually were shown in, nice houses and good lighting and, well dressed and groomed instead of the slow pan outward from the single eyeball until you see the entire image. And it's this dingy, shitty motel room with like a woman lying there pretending she's half dead from like
Yeah, it was so challenging to process. And look, there were other parts as well. It wasn't just that they were lovingly dressed. I thought like the angles were better, the writing looked better, like, the interview questions, the lighting, the commentary provided, even the background music, without the typical degrading cues. Do you feel like this makes the general message of fetishism more palatable?
Well, yeah, because we know that audiences can be led by music. I mean, how many exhaustive research, studies have been done on how music influences emotion, especially in film, television, documentaries. Like if you play circus music, people aren't going to take it seriously. If you play something like quiet and decorative, people will probably pay attention.
I think it does. I think you can't help but sit up and pay attention when things are done properly, There was one point where Renee says, I feel like I would be losing a piece of my womanhood if I had to lose weight. Does this resonate with you?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, to the extent of like if she feels that her feminine, why is this so hard to say? Femininity is wrapped up.
Femininity.
I, I think
Feminine.
I still fucked it up.
Feminine. Itty.
Yes, if her femininity
The
is,
feminine
I'm
titty.
so,
If her feminine titties.
I'm sorry. Like, have you ever seen the movie Girls Will Be Girls?
No.
It's about three drag queens, and one of them can't pronounce this particular word in her script that she's trying to do, so they have to like film her saying it off camera and then like cut that bit in, and she's like astrophysicist.
I have to do the same thing with the word brewery. Brewery. And I have to,
Brewery,
and I fully have to be like brewery. Because if I just go brewery, like it just brewery, like I can't,
brewery. It's
I
a
can't,
brewery.
I just can't do it. I can't do it.
But anyway, to
But
get back to the question,
but if you had
yes,
to lose weight,
if her
would your
feminine energy is
uh-huh.
wrapped up in her weight, or at least
Yeah.
she perceives it that way, then I could understand her feeling like she's losing her womanhood to lose the weight. As in, I feel that a lot of my masculine energy has come from my weight gain. If I were to lose that, perhaps I would end up becoming more androgynous again and taking on that. And I'm not really interested in taking on that role again.
No, I concur, and I feel the same way, which, it's one of those aspects of fetism where I just don't know that we ever talk about it. And not to say us, because I feel like we talk about everything. I feel like there isn't many things we haven't talked about, except all the things we haven't. But we'll get to it, so just tune in and listen. It might be next week, you never know. But like, what it does for your mental health, what it does for your gender identity, like, it's gender. Okay, a boob job, a BBL, that is putting mass into your body.
Yeah.
Like, that's considered gender affirming care. Well, except it's not, because apparently, like, you're just allowed to do those things.
I
And
thought it was considered strictly cosmetic.
well, it's cosmetic, right? But it should be gender affirming care because what does it mean to get breast reduction or a breast enlargement? It is care for your body that helps you to feel good
Yeah.
in the space that you're in. And I feel like gaining is just a glorified, strung out process of like affirming care. I am affirmed by my weight gain. It has done nothing but positive for me. So, God, if I had to lose weight, oh, I'd be a right mess. Now, at one point, Patty, different lady, she says, ultimately the choice is mine. They put their desires on me, but I get to choose. How often are we critiqued with this idea of choice when it comes to intentional weight gain?
All the time because people think we've been brainwashed. People think we have eating disorders. People think that I mean, and on rare occasions you'll run into somebody who, does have a particular obsession with it. And that, unfortunately, like that's the example that gets thrown up there all the time, right? Is like that does happen. There are, and God bless them, but like they usually get put up as the straw man, for the entire community. It's like, oh well, you all must be like this. No, yeah, we have members like that, and I'm glad we do because they produce wonderful content and they make a wonderful addition to the community, but they don't represent everybody.
Mm. No, I agree. And it's interesting that so much of this narrative, you know, I'm sure we've talked about this at some stage, but like none of this content is ever about gay men. And the reason why I think that's important is not from a sexist perspective of like, we need more men. I mean, I want more men because that's what I identify with.
Well, yeah.
But the queer element renders all this critique about fetism completely null and void because it is rooted in the idea that men take advantage of women. But in a queer dynamic, whether it's man on man or woman on woman, that can't exist because there
No,
is.
I bet that they would still say that though, because well, one is taking a feminine position by being the submissive, like that's the kind of crap people come up with.
Yeah, but
Because people still ask you, like, if you're with somebody for a long time and you run into someone who's like, maybe generational and they don't know that shit has changed, they're gonna ask you, so who's the woman?
oh yeah, like which one's the top of the bottom? But it's
Yeah.
interesting. It's like when you point to a pair of chopsticks, and you're like, which one's the knife and the fork? You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
it's completely irrelevant. Um, it's ironic because you, like you were saying, you're going to get people who are like, oh, well, they're the feminine one because they're the submissive, but baby, in any kind of dom sub situation, like it is the sub that has the true power. So even in that example, women come out on top. So once
I
again,
mean, have you never heard of a power bottom before?
yeah,
Like,
bottom, like Mary.
you can be a dominant sub, you can be a submissive dom.
You can be anything you
It can
want.
be anything you damn well please. You can
Jesus,
switch back and forth all you want. No one's watching you. There's no BDSM police.
yeah, you know, Jesus said it. I don't know where, but I'm sure he did. He was out there sucking dick real good up in the Middle East. He was having a good old time, just, you know what I mean? And then like,
What do you want about?
I'm just trying to do a bit.
I think I completely lost the plot. What the hell are you talking about?
I think I'm just punch drunk. No,
Oh, okay.
I was gonna do a bit where it's like Jesus like comes up for air after having sucked off 12 men, gives a sermon on the mount after he's given his mounted.
Mounted.
And yeah, and he's like, you can be
Yeah, that takes too many mental acrobatics, sweetie.
yeah, it's too much. It's too much for today. But no, we are critiqued on the choice of intentional wanking. Now, there was another woman, Lizzie, and she says, I never saw myself as ugly. It was only when people would comment to put me down that I would feel upset. What do you make of that?
I think this is that clear example of where, you really here's the thing about human experience, right? You really don't know anything about yourself until someone points it out, right? When you're very, very little, you only find out the difference between boys and girls is because somebody points it out, and it's like you could, and if no one in your family, your immediate vicinity is telling you things like you're fat or you're ugly or you're all this other stuff, of course you're going to grow up with a pretty healthy self-image until you go out into the world and you have all this external shit that starts, beating down on you. So yeah, she probably didn't think of herself that way until someone said, I think you're ugly because of the way you look, you know?
I mean, I think
So
that to me, it comes back to the importance of community, which I feel like I must harp on about forever now. But because you need edification, you need people who will substantiate you and tell you the truth that you look fantastic. You do not want to lean on people who say bullshit, and I know that a lot of people express they struggle to develop those relationships, but I think it's just so important. Maybe that should be more of our priority in the community. Yes, you want to gain weight, but actually maybe don't post a pic today. Maybe don't, go off and stuff yourself. Maybe say hello to someone and meet them for a coffee or something. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Something different. Now, at one point, yet another woman, Kit, she says, I understand it's not normal, but it's my perception of normal. How do you feel the concept of gaining and fetishism relates to the idea of quote-unquote normal?
It doesn't, because there's no such thing. Or there's societal norms, but who gives a shit? Like, yeah, it's everything's weird. Everything is weird. Everything that I like is weird. Everything you like is weird. But you know what? But I enjoy being this weirdo, right? And weird does not mean bad. It just means a deviation from what everyone else is doing, right?
I also think, like, when you're like a young kid and you're like, oh, like being normal is boring, like stand out and be weird, and it's like, yeah, but adulthood is knowing that there is no such thing as normal. Like every concept is objectively weird in relation to something else. And again, I think that's kind of the point. Like, we don't need to bother ourselves with like people who call us weird derogatorily. Like, we need to only bother with the people that want to invest in us in positive ways and celebrate our weirdness, if that's what it comes down to.
I mean, you can take weird as a compliment. If I do, I
Yeah,
don't care.
yeah.
Because somebody calling me weird doesn't change one damn thing in my life. It's not like it stops a bill from being paid or, stops my paycheck from coming in. Like, I don't care. Call me weird all you want. I'll wear it with pride.
Oh, that's fair. So it wasn't until like 25 minutes in that I heard anything potentially negative, which was had by Patty's son, who, he was just expressing all the things he has to do for his mom. Like, how does that kind of sit with you? Because outside of obesity, like there are kids who are carers for their parents, right? Like,
Yeah.
how does that conversation sit with you?
Yeah, that one's tough for me because I understand a especially a son, wanting to care for his ailing mother, but at the same time, I think that that's pretty large burden to place on your child, and I because I work in the industry I work in, like I see that 9 times out of 10, this this person who's become ailing is usually dropped off at a nursing home, and the family comes maybe weekly for a little while, but then it's every couple of weeks, and then sometimes it's only at holidays. um but yeah, I can see both sides of like, yes, I want to look after my mother because she means so much to me, but I really don't think it's fair,
Hmm.
for him to have to give up anything that he may want to be doing in order to take care of her.
No, I feel that. And, this, we haven't, I won't
And
say,
he also knew what she did for a living to make
mm,
money. He also, and he, I believe, didn't he have to assist her with bathing as well? Like, he had to do everything for her, right?
yeah. And like, there is an argument to be said when people are like, oh, I don't want to have to do that for my parent. That's so gross. But also, like, mate, if your mum's shitting in nappies, like, someone's got to help her. And like, she changed yours when you
Yeah.
were a bit helpless. So man up and wipe the poo off for us. Do you know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
get it. It's not fun. No one's asking for it to be fun, but also
Mhm.
bit of bit of gumption there, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I do agree. When you're a young person, you want to go out and have the same opportunities as everyone else. You want to go out and see the world, and it is hard, And I know we haven't necessarily had this conversation, but this is part of that. Part of what it is to be like, oh, if you're a parent and you had children, but as a parent you're a gainer, like it's not appropriate to feed your child the same diet that you're eating because they're not consenting to what's going on. And she's not feeding up her son, but they are a dependent. They are dependent on you. That's why they're called dependent.
Yeah.
So that to me is where it gets a little bit shaky. Like your child is having to take care of you. But anyways, that's a different
Yeah.
conversation. We'll save that for another episode. Um, but I think this is also why we ask these questions because when you do pick it apart, like it does resonate. There are moments that create, you think about these things. Um, and this is the thing, the only real negative queries aren't truly negative. They're more geared to query, like if there's a regret or a desire to do something different. But it does end on a bit of a sour note because Patty says, if I could turn back time, I wouldn't do this. And it just seems like a very weird place to end the film. Like it all
Yeah.
seems very fine until that moment, and it's like, oh, that doesn't feel like a closer. That feels oh,
To me, that felt like the end of a morality tale, like
mm,
a morality lesson, in a, wrapped up in a story, and then like, and at the end of it, it was like, oh well, I wouldn't do it if I could, or if I could go back in time, I take it all back, so that it can end on this idea of, see, like that's what I got out of it.
yeah, almost like were they trying to say all along that the film was like, oh well, you think being fat's good, you think it'll bring you joy, but actually you'll regret it. Like if you pursue, which like guys, just can we not? But ultimately that was my big fat fetish, which it was fine. It's fine. It was a time. It happened. Do you know what I mean? I mean, ultimately, I think I would give this. I think I would give this an 8 out of 10, right? Because even though it was fine, even though
Yeah.
the last moment was weird, ultimately, I think versus other products we've seen, it had more of the good, more of the produce, more of the production value.
Yeah.
You know. So I'll give it an 8 out of 10.
I also gave it an 8.
The second documentary we're going to be reviewing is called Fat Front. Now, this one was a little bit different because mentionings of fetism were very, very minimal. And this
Yeah.
one, maybe a little bit differently, was a full feature documentary made centered in Scandinavia.
Yeah.
And I think that's what really stood out to me was, we don't see a lot of feature-length films in foreign languages, especially around this subject.
Yeah.
What did it mean to you to see like a Nordic perspective, considering how progressive they're always shown to be?
Yeah, that's really what I was curious about because I know that culturally they're like way ahead of the game. So I was curious to see what their overall perspective on it was.
Do you feel like that framing makes it easier to consume?
The framing that they're or that I knew that they were more progressive, or the way that the film is just framed in general.
Well, the fact that it's Nordic, like, do you think the fact that, oh, we don't see a lot of this from these people would make people be like, oh, I'm gonna watch it, I'm gonna be more open to it, I'm gonna receive what they have to say, versus the bog standard what they might be expecting to see in the cinema?
I mean, if you're used to that style of cinematography, I suppose, but like,
Mm.
it's different. I've seen a lot of Bergman films, and I've seen oh crap, and now the name's going to escape me, the other film director, but I've seen that type of film before,
Mm.
and it's not preferred, but it is no less valid.
Yeah. In the piece, we do see many different shots where there is a naked person being photographed, swimming, brushing their teeth, and you see all that jiggling, marching, celebrating life naked. How does seeing fat bodies in a non-sexual context make you feel?
Well, it just normalizes it,
Yeah.
just it because I suppose on the other end of this spectrum is the more salacious stuff that we've watched, that had full out tits on display, sexy music, angles that were very revealing and all that. So this being the opposite is going to be the real world. This is just what it looks like every single day.
Yeah. And it obviously makes me feel quite at home in the sense of like, for me, like I'm naked because I sleep naked. And then when I get up in the morning and I'm pottering around and I'm like brushing my teeth and doing what I'm doing, like I'm stark naked, just like half asleep trying to deal with life. So, I thought that was very real to see these more like candid moments of like nude obesity. I thought that was quite nice.
God forbid that there's ever a fire in either of our houses. We're going to be running out into the street naked.
I'm ready for the fireman, baby girl. Ready for the take me now, take me.
No, my dumb ass would probably try to put some clothes on as I'm jumping out the window.
And there's me like already sucking off the fireman, like, don't worry, she's fine. I'm like, you're right, girl, you broke it.
And I'm trying to put one pant leg in, and I slip off the roof and break my arm or something.
Like, okay, Santa Claus, like,
I'm just talking about my general bad luck. That's all.
no, that's fair, that's fair. Now, one of the ladies, Marta from Norway, she mentions that she struggles with dating because feeders focus only on one part of her identity. Do you feel like this is a fair judgment?
I mean, again, it should be more nuanced than that, but I'm sure overall, yes, I'm sure that there are more cases of men projecting what they want onto her because some men just don't get it, and they tend to be the most gregarious of the whole group. The guys who get it usually are. It's not that they're not approachable, but they're not going to just be aggressive about it, whereas the douchebags are always aggressive.
Like, I'm so sick of everything that we are being labeled as inherently problematic, whereas I'm sat here like, I don't even know if these examples people lambast us with are legitimate. Like, everyone's got a friend of a friend who knew a guy whose third cousin, twice removed on his dog's side, was actually being fed to death and they had to cut her out of the basement. And then when they picked her up with a crane, she exploded. You know what I mean? Like, everyone's got that fucking story. And I'm like, I'm tired. I'm tired of it. It's just not anything. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying.
So look, I feel like if people have that negative experience, I want more accountability for it.
Yeah.
I want more trust that like feeders and gainers as well, because like they hear that you're a gainer and they're like, oh, don't feed me up, and I'm like, baby, if anything, I'm gonna take money from you. Like I'm
Yeah.
getting fat. You're just lucky to have me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is interesting, and I know that we talked about this before. Like Scandinavia is seen as being the most progressive region in the world, and yet a lot of the different stories of these women indicate there's a lot of the same fat phobia that we see elsewhere in the world. Is that surprising to you?
No, because isn't fat like the last frontier? I mean, isn't it the like the last way that you can be intentionally mean to somebody, like as if they're fat? Like, because there's so much when it comes to social graces that we've just completely ruled out. Like, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't say this, and so on and so forth. But it seems to always be acceptable to mock the fat.
Mm, it's very that phrase that you can be in the most diverse space that cares about your cultural background, your sexuality, your gender, your economic heritage, the language you speak, your disability, access. But if you're fat, cooked. Which is wild to me, you know?
Considering how many people have the problem, yeah. Well, I mean, we don't consider it a problem, but they do.
No, that's very true. Now, I will say with this one in particular, like it only really has that one or two scenes where they like mention fetism, right? So like the
Yeah,
ties to fetism specifically are very specious
yeah.
in this particular film. But I do think it's interesting to explore the ideas and motivations behind fat liberation and the different experiences that inform them. Like, do you think a piece like this can help straight-sized people understand the fat experience more generally?
I mean, I would hope so, but I have to be completely honest. It was not the easiest thing to follow. It the tone and everything. It was not easy to watch. So if they can get all the way through it, then yes. But I don't think it's going to give much insight. It's going to sort of dip a toe in, but it's not going to explain anything to you.
It does kind of feel like a lot of the same narratives that, when we talk about like the normalcy of things, like it feels like it all kind of comes around to it. It's like, oh, why did they get fat? Because they were fed a lot of food as a child and their parents didn't know boundaries. They were bullied a lot growing up, or like parents would make them go on diets and, all of this kind of stuff. And like, I understand like that is human experience and it's good to share that and see that, but I'm also sat here like, you're talking about being fat liberationists, and it feels like a lot of this documentary really wants to center on your trauma,
Yeah.
not in a healing way, but in a very like this is why she's a fat loud bitch. Like is basically what I took from that. Listen, those were our two documentaries. Fat Front. I mean, I think like a solid five
I gave it a 4.
because it wasn't bad, but like it just wasn't.
It wasn't dynamic. It didn't capture
Yeah.
my attention the way that I was hoping it would. Look, I understand that there are cultural differences in the way that films are made, but not everything works in every audience. It's like I'm sure that if I showed someone who wasn't accustomed to or didn't even like the sort of like loud in your face brash way that Americans have making films, they're probably not going to be that interested.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And I mean, I feel like you have to choose what you want to get out of certain things, you know? Like, we watched this with the real hope that we were going to learn some real, like, interesting. Like, I want to learn about, like, oh, Scandinavia and fat liberation. Like, well, everyone's built like Vikings, you know? Like, what does that mean when people are naturally
Mm.
so tall and so broad, right? But hey ho. So, having watched these two films, what do you think the director's motivations were from producing these two films?
I'm uncertain of the motivation with the first one just because of how it ended. To
Mm,
me, it was almost as if they were saying "gotcha," you know.
yeah.
So I kind of question their motivations with that one. And with the second one, I mean, obviously it was intended to be a serious look at something. It was supposed to be taken very seriously. It's very quiet. It's very calm, collected, cool,
Hmm.
sophisticated. Even I could go as far as to say, and you know, um, it worked for what they were trying to achieve. Just because I didn't enjoy it doesn't mean that it doesn't work as a film.
Yeah. No, I get that. I think the first one was, like the motivation was to probably really show, oh, this is what people are getting up to.
Yeah,
I felt like it was good. The second one, an exploration, but they could have done more.
yeah.
They could have done more, and I'm sad they didn't.
Well, that's kind of a common thing with these is you could have done more, or you could have done better. Like in the case of some of them, it's like you could have done a lot better.
You could have done a lot better
But
by just deciding not to do this. That would have made it better. Um, what was your favorite thing and least favorite thing about each of these?
I think my favorite thing about The second one anyway, despite the fact that I didn't end up liking the film, was just the way that it was taken very seriously, and it was filmed in a very, I don't want to say clinical way, but it certainly felt sterile.
Hmm.
It felt kind of devoid of, and maybe it was the muted color scheme, maybe it was the fact that it was the middle of winter, I don't know. But I did enjoy that it was taken as seriously as it was. It wasn't made into a mockery. It wasn't made into a freak show or what's the bait and switch. It wasn't a bait and switch.
Yeah. I feel the same way about both pieces. I was surprised pleasantly by both of them not being terribly offensive. What I liked about the first one was it really did seem to highlight positivity. The second one, I don't know, it felt like the first 5 minutes when you're waiting for the plot to start and then the plot just never started. Not that it needs such a specific plot because it's a documentary. By the same token, it's like, I want to understand more about like why we're in this region at this time doing this thing. It feels like,
it felt more like a series of vignettes in the end. And I mean, Twilight had more of a plot than that thing did.
yeah. And we're kind of talking about changes already, so I think that's kind of it with these two. Unless, do you think
Yeah.
there's anything else we haven't really touched?
Yeah, no, no.
Yeah. Well, that's it, y'all. We reviewed them. Thanks for listening. Please remember to like and subscribe, rate us 5 stars, leave us a good review. If you like this episode, the podcast, or just us in general, please share it with your friends and encourage them to tune in. You can find me on Instagram and BlueSky at stannnum.
And you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok at Thicc Mouse. You can also look us up on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Thicc Radio, or at our website at podpage.com/Thicc Radio. If you want to submit a voice note or become a financial supporter of the show, you can find the links in the show notes, and you can always write to us at thiccradio@gmail.com. So until next time, bye, Fats.
Bye, Fats.
Let's talk about it.
Thicc Radio is a Patreon and Anchor app podcast produced by Stan and Thicc Mouse.
Mixed and mastered by Stanham.
Our artwork is provided by Louise.
Our theme song is provided by BlueSky.